Okay.
Does that appear to be correct in the PK?
I'd have to go back and,
Well, the previous one you tested.
Next question.
Sure. All right, we can take that off for a minute. I'd like to just go over two more areas of these group chats with you. You would agree with me that later that same day on February 4th, the four of you, your wife, Brian Albert, and Nicole Albert, discussed in that group chat the fact that Michael Proctor was talking to Kerry Roberts over the phone, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
At 3:01 and 48 seconds, you commented on the interview of Michael Proctor with Kerry Roberts, did you not?
Objection.
Sustained.
May we be seen?
So I'd like you to not leave the witness in the dark if there's something that he can have.
What I'm going to do now, sir, is to hand you 3 more pages and ask if you can identify those.
All right, Mr. McCabe, generally, do you recognize those,
Yeah.
sir? All right, so
I'm
go
just
ahead.
marching it up, yep.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Yannetti.
The pages that I've handed to you and that you now have in your possession, those are from the same group chat that you identified earlier, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And it appears to have the same sequence and content of the group chat as well?
Yes.
I would offer that one.
Over the Commonwealth's objection, again, I'm not sending anything to the jury that they can't read. So let's mark this for identification.
You saw that at 3:01 p.m. and 48 seconds on February 1st that you texted, quote, very weird that she's been barely interviewed. The whole dead comment was just told. I was supposed to have them talk last night and forgot to tell Proctor to call her. Do you recall that?
I recall it, correct.
All right. And those were your words, correct?
Yes, they are.
May that be displayed for
No, it's in. We may display it later, but I'd like to move this testimony along. So that's in evidence.
And then in that discussion, at 3:03 p.m. and 15 seconds, it was Brian Albert who texted, quote, hope they don't think she's making it up after the fact for some reason, end quote, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
Can you read the timestamp again?
It's the second
It's on
page.
page 02161.
Oh, I found it.
Yep,
Yes.
it's in the middle. I got that timestamp correct?
3:03:15.
Correct. And I read that accurately. Hope they don't think she's making it up after the fact?
Yes, that's correct.
And then less than a minute later at 3:05 and 32 seconds, you replied, yes, she was hardly interviewed, and I think just answered what was asked. Oh, I'm sorry, strike that whole question. I skipped his next response, which was at 3:05 and 2 seconds, where he said, but if they barely interviewed her, that's on them, correct?
That's from Brian. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, with regard to that exchange, you would agree with me that you were talking about Kerry Roberts being interviewed by Michael Proctor, correct?
I don't want to make an assumption. Do you have the text previous to this that shows that we're referencing Kerry?
I do, and I'll show you that only to refresh your memory.
Yeah, I don't want to assume something.
I understand. I'm going to show you one page and ask you to look at it silently to yourself.
Okay.
And I've opened the packet for the page.
Okay.
You can just look up at me when you're done.
Yeah. Again, my assumption is Kerry based. Can I go back another page?
Feel free.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Yes.
Did those previous pages refresh your memory about the context of your group chat conversation?
Yes, it did.
And certainly it was talking about Kerry Roberts being interviewed, correct?
Yes, it was.
And you were passing along information about that interview to Brian Albert, were you not?
Yes, I was letting him know that Kerry was being interviewed.
And you were telling him things that she was saying, correct? Remember you said the whole dead comment was just told?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
All right, in any case, we're going to move on to the very last discussion that I'd like to ask you about. Earlier that day, February 1st of 2022, at 12:50 p.m. and 37 seconds, Brian Albert texted the group, which would have again been his wife Nicole, your wife Jennifer, and you. And that text was...
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, so I can't, which bubble on which page?
02148.
Right, on which page?
That's the page.
Okay, as you continue to fill out your cast of characters, Matthew McCabe there, at least his last name is not Albert. That's helpful. But I'm telling you, the party that night, on the night of the incident, January 29, 2022, it was crowded. There were a lot of folks wandering around. Luckily, here to help me sort all of this out, I have Sherry Botlin. She is a licensed criminal social worker. That may be a Freudian slip. She's also a trauma expert. And we also have Katherine Lizardo here. Katherine, good to see you as always. Sherry, let me ask you, give me your take on this guy on the stand. He's in cross-examination now. It's always uncomfortable. You know, it's always a little sketchy. But how do you think he's doing? Is he believable? Does it seem to a jury that, you know, this guy is credible?
When I listened to the direct exam, I found him to be very credible, very clear. But I'm noticing as he's being cross-examined, he seems very nervous and he's almost like thinking a lot about what he's saying. So as somebody who doesn't know him and is just watching him, now my perspective on him is changing. So I would say at this point, I'm not really feeling he's super credible.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the way most of these things play out. Direct exam is very rehearsed. You know kind of what's coming. Even though he's a precipient witness, not a party to the action. But nonetheless, when you're under cross-examination, things get a little different. Let's take a break. We'll come back. The Karen Reed case unfolding right in front of you, and we'll get back to it right after this. Right now, though, Jennifer McCabe is on the stand, and she is the sister-in-law of Brian Albert. He owns the home at 34 Fairview, where they found the body of John O'Keefe. So this trial, which is a second-degree murder trial, means this woman, if convicted, could go to prison for life, a minimum of 25 years in prison. Lesser included, maybe she will get hit with one of those because the evidence on second degree is a little weak. Let's go back into court for more of this testimony from Jennifer McCabe.
Now, with reference to Karen and John, we're talking about John O'Keefe and Karen, correct?
Yes.
And how long had you known John O'Keefe?
Approximately 10 years.
And how was it that you first came to know John O'Keefe?
John's sister and her husband lived in the neighborhood, and my daughter became friends with John's niece when they were in kindergarten. And during that kindergarten year, John's sister and then brother-in-law passed away, and John moved in and took care of the kids.
And just for clarity purposes, this would have been when you were living at the home on Sutcliffe?
Yes.
And then after John moved in with his niece and nephew, what, if any, role or what, if any, relationship did you have with either John or his niece specifically?
So my daughter was very good friends with his niece. And so, you know, she would be over all the time. And JJ would come over with Patrick and pick her up. And he would come in and talk to us and hang out.
And how would you describe your relationship with John O'Keefe?
He was my friend. I love John. He was an amazing guy.
Now, with reference to Karen Reed, and just for clarity purposes, do you see Karen Reed in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Can you identify just as to where she's seated or not?
She's seated between her attorneys.
John just has a record reflect identification
Yes.
by the witness. Now, with respect to the defendant, Ms. Reed, when was it that you met her?
John had reached out to me saying that he was dating a new girl and that she had MS and I also have MS. So he said he would like for me to meet her.
And how long have you had MS?
I believe it will be 10 years this October.
And do you recall specifically when around that was, what year, what month, anything like that?
That I met Miss Reed?
Yes.
Yes, they came over in July of 2020.
And came over to your house, is that correct?
Yes, they came over to the house. They brought the kids, swam. I have a pool.
Now, over the course of, you were familiar, obviously, that Ms. Reed was dating Mr. O'Keefe, correct? Mm-hmm. Over the course of time.
Yes. Sorry.
Over the course of time from July of 2020, when you met her, to January of 2022, how often would you see Ms. Reed?
It would vary. You know, there were times that we would bump into them, or depending on their sports, or, for my daughter's birthday party, when it was time to pick up, they'd come over and hang out, or Halloween. It just varied. We have 4 kids, so we're always kind of in all different directions. Sometimes it depends on what month it is and what team we're with.
And how would you describe your relationship with Ms. Reed?
I enjoyed Miss Reed. I really liked her. I thought we connected from the beginning. She was very easy to talk to. She had MS, I had MS, and there's not a lot of people our age that I personally know that have it. So it was nice to have someone who understood like what I was going through. So we had that in common.
Now, with respect, to either, starting with Mr. O'Keefe, was your friendship the type where you would have any sort of discussions about his relationship with Ms. Reed, or any girls that he dated at any point in time that you were friends with him?
At different points, yes.
And what, if anything, specific do you recall him telling you about his relationship?
I'm getting the feeling that maybe what started as a friendship maybe devolved, and luckily Sherry Botwin is here. What do you think, Sherry? Are you getting? She's talking about her friend in the past tense. She's sitting right there. She's alive. What do you make of that?
It doesn't look like they're friends anymore. Even when she needed to identify her, you could just see she looked over and she looked angry and upset with Miss Reed. I think she's going to be a really important witness, because this witness is going to really give us a sense of who Karen Reed actually was. And I think it's going to be really important. So we're going to have to wait and see. But my sense just from these few minutes of listening to the witness is that they're not friends anymore, and there's a reason why.
Yeah, and I get the feeling we're going to find out why, don't you?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to thank and excuse Sherry Botwin. I appreciate the insights from a mental health professional. I usually get them when I'm on the couch, so it's very different to get them right here in the context of this case. So thank you so much for joining. Katherine Lizardo is going to stick around. When we come back, we're going to go all biomechanical on you on this particular SUV. This is the 570 Lexus, and I ain't selling it. We're going to talk about it. More coming up on the other side. This is Law and Crime.